Wow.
Okay.
Got it.
Good.
Got it. That's off. Got it on. Got it off. Put him down again.
That's in shade. No.
I think it let him get in the sun so we can get a good picture of it. Here.
Bottom belly. Okay, now up.
Identification is completed.
Take this with us. Need demos with doors. There we go. Okay, so now we've got that. We've got the innards here that I can show you how this works. And we will go from there. Hey guys. We started this with 5 guys, lost money for 8 straight years, made a lot of mistakes along the way, but we learned a lot too. And as you see, suddenly 5 guys starting a company develop this to where you're selling hundreds of thousands of Tayzer devices. This is the American dream. You take a product that you think is going to save lives, you build it up, and you have all that elbow grease, blood, sweat, and tears, belief in it, workers that work their tail off, and then now, suddenly you're making this thing that's being worn by 15,000 police departments. That's when you know you've really hit the stride. To the outside observer, we're using electricity. That scares people. We're shocking somebody in their minds of people. That scares people. We're using something that's foreign. We've been trained as kids to be afraid of electricity, and yet medical science has used electricity for benefits from physical therapy to inner cardiac defibrillators to pacemakers to helping the brain. There's all sorts of things electricity can be used safely every day. It can also be used to cause great harm when it's used at great levels of power that we're nowhere near.
So again, welcome everybody. I'm Rick Smith, and I'm going to start off by just giving you a basic update on some of the numbers. We are now in over 100 countries. We've got 16,400 agencies, over 500,000 weapons now deployed. Over 300 medical studies have now been completed. We estimate there have been over 75,000 incidents where tasers have been used to save people from potential death or serious injury.
Very few companies can wake up in the morning and say, we've changed the world. But we have. We have revolutionized the way use of force is being done, and we are going to continue to do that.
We believe this is actually a conservative estimate when you consider their minimum.
Well, Rick and Tom Smith were the founders of the company, and there were 3 others that were hired on subsequently thereafter. The motivating factor was there's got to be a better way to let technology incapacitate someone without causing death.
The reason my brother and I started our company is we had 2 friends get shot and killed in a crazy road rage incident, and we looked at that and said, why isn't there a better way to stop somebody without having to resort to lethal force? We grew up watching Star Wars and Star Trek and said, why can't we make the non-lethal phaser? And that's what led us to start the company.
Got the CEO from Tayzer International, Rick Smith, here to join us to talk about the new Tayzers. Rick, it's great to have you. Welcome.
Thanks, good to be here.
Let's talk about what this does. Now, it's very low amperage, so it's not harmful, right?
Right, won't affect the heart, won't affect the pacemaker, but it causes your body to lock up. It's like, take a computer network. Imagine putting that spike of electricity into it. Right. It's going to send everything haywire. We do the same thing inside the human body, so the brain can't tell the arms, legs, and muscles what to do. And if you can't move, you can't attack anyone.
All the research says there is absolutely no evidence that there's any permanent damage or harm at all from this thing, right?
That's right. We've hit over 5,000 law enforcement volunteers, and they've hit over 1,200 bad guys in the field with it. And the wires, it's like mini jumper cables.
Right.
We launch it out, we make the
nice
attachment,
right.
And, well, it's descriptive. And
what's to stop a perpetrator from breaking those wires off?
The 50,000 volts that's going through his body.
By Tom Smith's count, more than 500,000 law enforcement officers in the United States now carry tasers. He and his brother Rick have taken what began as a backyard experiment and built it into a policeman's weapon of choice.
If we can just temporarily take away control of their body and get them under control, it's about as nonviolent as you could get.
The first guy I tasered, it worked like a charm, you know. He dropped to the ground, he was sorry. He thought I shot him with a pistol because the tasers were so brand new, I don't think he even realized we had them. It was gonna get ugly. And his kid's there and his kid's crying and it just ended it right there, ended it. And I thought, wow, that was cool. You know, the guy had, you know, he had a couple of little probe marks in him, but that was the extent of his injuries. You know, we enjoy the excitement of the job, the adrenaline that it gives us, but there's no pleasure in beating the crap out of somebody. That's not fun. The tasers, to me, were a means to get away from that. It got to the point where you'd pull the taser out of its cartridge and the guy would give up. And that was actually, it was cool, you know? He wouldn't run because he thought he was gonna get tasered. He wouldn't fight because he thought he was gonna get tasered.
When you pepper spray someone, depending on your sensitivity, it can affect you from 10 minutes to 2 hours to 6 hours, whereas the taser, as deployed, is a 5-second cycle. If you take that person into custody, at the end of that 5-second cycle, it's done. There are no follow-up actions. There's no adverse effect. You know, medical care, no treatment. You take the probes out, and the person goes to jail.
So no one ever breaks a finger, no one ever hurts their shoulder, no one ever twists a knee because you have the taser to use. And I think that was the thought at the beginning, and I think, you know, it was welcomed, and then the experiment began.
Bench your gear.
The police academy in Manhattan turns out New York's finest. However, to some New Yorkers, the police are anything but. The most common explanation advanced for police brutality is the terrible stress of police work. Exposed to violence daily, some officers themselves can turn violent.
The violence here comes on the heels of a racial confrontation in which one black youth was killed.
We have to be ready to respond to violence.
Last year in this country, there were 8,000 lawsuits alleging police brutality.
Pepper spray doesn't work on everyone. Everyone's senses are different. Everyone's bodies are different.
It's going to be the officer's job to get this person under control. There was certainly a need for something in between.
For some departments, the answer in part may come from non-lethal weapons still being perfected, like a so-called glue gun that shoots out a sticky foam, or a laser dazzler which disorients a suspect.
Into the debate over whether to make handguns illegal, enter a new space-age weapon that stuns but does not kill the victim.
We are now selling it to the public, and we feel that it is a very suitable replacement for the gun.
The idea of electric weapons has been around a long time. Cover, a space scientist, remembered reading about it as a boy, not in a textbook, but in Tom Swift's electric rifle, written in 1911.
Officers trying to take a man into custody, they used a taser. The taser should have dropped him long enough for the officers to take control. It didn't.
From stun guns to tasers, they can be effective, but have never been totally reliable against focused, combative attackers.
Well, first we had to take Jack's, terrific idea that was way ahead of its time, and we had to do several things to it. We had to improve the triggering mechanism. We had to improve the accuracy of it.
Now, ideally, this will give us a little bit of wind. Let her rip. All right, as you can see, already you need hair like me. We're blowing. Here, why don't you show my hair blowing here? I'm going to give an idea how much this is blowing. See, it's plenty of wind. Not a problem at all. In the wind. Yep.
Well, the air taser was our first effort, and it was a terrific effort. But the problem that we had with that product is it didn't have the stopping power to stop a truly motivated individual.
We want you to attack the camera.
We could see motivated individuals fight through the effects. In other words, it was sort of a pain compliance tool.
Come get me, come get me. All right.
Okay, Lieutenant Conley, here we go. Once you get focused, get focused, get focused. Of course, that's something.
Now, the M26 was the proverbial home run of a product. We knew that if we didn't have a tool that stopped the motivated individual, we weren't going to be successful.
Do you think there's any possibility you could have attacked through that?
Oh, hell no.
The M26 stopped motivated individuals. I mean, clearly. That was like the holy grail. So we knew we were onto something, and the word got out, spread through law enforcement community. And we would fly in and do demonstrations with law enforcement. And we'd say, look, bring your toughest guy, the stud. There's guys that can take pepper spray. They can take stun guns and hit themselves with it, and they could fight through it. We would hit these guys with the taser, drop them to the ground.
Taser! Taser! Right. Come on, fight it!
Holy shit! Holy shit, motherfucker!
You can fight right now.
No, I don't want to fight. I'm done. Motherfucker! I just came in my pants.
They'd be coherent instantly after the effect, and they'd look at us with this dazed look of, holy cow, you stopped me.
Couldn't do a thing. Helpless, absolutely helpless.
If I meet the guy that can stand up to that, I'll turn in my badge gun and become a florist.
When those agencies adopted it, they would go to test and evaluation field studies. And that's where you put the rubber to the road.
Put it down. Put it down. Put that down. Put it down. Put that down. Last hit. Put it down.
Now the news this morning, a taser gun helps to end a 3-hour standoff in Longmont, and it's all caught on tape.
Across the country, cops call this taser the revolution.
Issuing tasers. Miami Police Department went for 20 months without discharging a single bullet at a citizen.
So it gives us another option besides lethal force, and in this case, it worked perfectly.
The media picked up on that eventually, and we became very successful with this tool that was using neuromuscular incapacitation.
No other company in the world has it. The technology. Taser International is in the business of protecting life and protecting truth.
Let's say we bring out the guys that brought us all those laughs and the most kick-ass devices in law enforcement, our founders, Rick and Tom Smith.
Rick and I would like to thank all of the Taser employees, from our board of directors all the way down to everybody on the production line, and all of you as instructors that deliver the training that's required for this to be successful. Thank you from us. Enjoy the conference, and thank you for taking your time to spend it with us here this morning.
Good morning. We're on the record. This is media number 1 of the videotape deposition of Rick Smith.
I'm going to be asking you a series of questions about your company and about your products. My objective is to get your version of events, your testimony, for you to say what you mean to say as clearly as possible on the record.
Mr. Smith, what is your current occupation?
I am the Chief Executive Officer of Taser International Incorporated.
And was that owned by you and your brother, Rick Smith?
He and I started it, and then my parents were involved. The first board meeting was at our dining room table at my parents' house. Well, at that point in time, we were breaking new ground. Our mission was basically to protect life. I mean, it's basically the mission that survives today, to develop a product that people can defend themselves without taking a life.
Well, you're going to sign this first. No, I'm not. I'm not signing anything, officer. Okay, hop out of the car. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. No, I'm not. Turn around, put your hands behind your back now. What's wrong with you? Turn around. Turn around. What the heck's wrong with you? No! No! Down on the ground. No! Down on the ground. Stay around. Stay down. Stay in the car. Turn around. Face down. Face down. Face down. Face down. Put your hands behind your back.
Around the country, there is increasing concern that some police are taser happy.
So there's the device and then there's the person holding it.
Right.
Because cops figure, hey, no muss, no fuss. Just pull the taser. How do you deal with the lazy cop syndrome, they call it?
We spend a lot of time in our training of law enforcement officers trying to avoid what we call taser dependency. That's our technology. It's like our baby. And when it gets misused, it does hit you in the gut.
An 86-year-old disabled grandmother is suing after police taser cuffed her and put her in a psych ward for 6 days.
About 1 week after learning from CNN that police tasered a 6-year-old boy in one of its elementary schools, the district said no more. In a letter sent to Miami-Dade's police chief, the school superintendent asked that police, quote, refrain from deploying tasers against elementary school students.
So that leads us to our last call question. Should police be able to use tasers on children? Give us a call at 1-800-807-2620.
You gotta use common sense first and foremost, but we've got clear guidelines on when use of force can be used. That's gotta be met, bar none. Otherwise, we've got a clear civil rights violation. So whether they're 33 or 10, firearm in that hand, an edge weapon, age is really not much of an issue at that point. It can weigh into the thinking. But that pregnant woman with a gun is just as dangerous as that ex-con that's 25 coming out of prison.
Okay. What we have in this situation is Tony. He's going to come at me. But the fact that he has a lethal weapon in the space of just a few feet, he could actually kill me. And right now, I have a less than lethal option in my hand.
We have yet to see the guy who can take this and just walk through it. We're giving the bullet an overhaul. We think 50 years from now, the world's going to be a very different place.
It could go from you having a cup of coffee, driving down 14 Mile Road to 30 seconds later, getting a call and standing in front of some crazy guy with a knife, walking down the street naked, you know? I mean, and now, I hope, getting back to your mindset, I hope you have a clear head today because now you have to make a decision. You have to make it now, you know? You can't let this guy hurt you and you can't let him walk down the street, you know, and possibly hurt somebody else, you know? So you have to make a split decision. And like Matt said, you have to always get it right. We're not given a whole lot of leeway for being wrong out here.
I always found that interesting where you can argue a case in court and the judge can come back in 90 days with an opinion. Whereas, you know, we go to a situation and you have to decide right now if you're going to make an arrest or if, you know, someone decides to resist, what level of force you're going to use. And if it's improper, then you have to deal with the consequences.
I don't even know. What language do you speak? He doesn't even speak English. Russian? Russian? Slavian? I don't know. Policja! Policja!
How are you, sir?
He speaks Russian and that's it. No English. Put your unconscious. Looks like he's breathing. Seek the ambulance.
Hi, Richmond RCMP.
Hi.
Can we have you code 3 to the international terminal arrivals area?
Okay, yeah, it looks like we have upgraded to code 3, so you're saying that he is unconscious now?
Yeah, they were asking for code 3.
Still breathing?
No, at this time. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem.
All we have...
The last moments of Robert Czekański, captured by a bystander. After arriving from Poland on his first ever plane ride, he's been waiting 10 hours for his mother, who told him to wait in the baggage area. But she couldn't go in there, couldn't get a message to him, and finally went home after being told he never arrived. We showed the tape to retired Superintendent Ron Foyle, a 33-year veteran of the Vancouver Police.
I don't know why it ever became a police incident. It didn't seem that he made any threatening gestures toward him.
So what were the options for police Sunday morning? The Mounties say pepper spray wasn't ideal because the area was crowded with travelers, and suggest the baton may have been too violent.
Is the way to deal with a person with excited delirium, if that's the case, is it to start breaking bones and assaulting somebody? I can just imagine what the public perception would be of that.
Well, now the guy's dead, so...
Yes, and you know what I have to say to you to that is let's all be patient and wait for the BC Coroner's autopsy to see what the cause of death is.
It's the press perspective, and we know that going in. We're not ignorant. We know they're not going to talk about 1,000 planes landing safely every hour. They're going to talk about the plane crash or the near miss. And that's what we're dealing with really in TASER issues, is that we don't get to see the 617 deployments a day in the United States, in which 99% of those result in a terrific outcome, saving a life, potentially reducing injuries to the officers and suspect. We're going to deal with that one near miss, or we're going to deal with that particular controversy issue, and that's all we focus on. It shocks people's, and I hate to use a pun, but it shocks people's acceptance sometimes, because they just don't understand that electricity can actually be used to save someone's life.
6 months have passed since the world watched and re-watched the last moments of Robert Czekański. The weapon was fired 5 times for a total of 31 seconds, 20 of those while Czekański was already on the ground with the Mounties on top of him. Commissioner Thomas Braidwood is holding a 2-stage inquiry, first into the safety of tasers generally, and second into the Czekański case specifically.
One of the greatest things about inquiries, and this is the case no matter whether the government ignores recommendations or not, is that you actually get to find out what happened.
Robert Czekański was a young Polish man who was coming to Canada from Poland to be reunited with his mom, and he was going to live here. It was a long flight. I think it was a 9 or 10 hour flight that he was on. He was not the best of flyers. And when he landed, he got lost. He wandered around in the baggage claim area of YVR, the Vancouver International Airport, for another 9 or 10 hours. Outside the doors of the International Reception Lounge were a couple of airport security people who were inadequately trained. They marched back and forth in front of the door like little soldiers, and they never engaged him. His impression was, and we found this out later when his speech was translated, he was saying to them, "So you're going to keep me in here? So you're not going to let me out?"
Eventually, he got so frustrated that he became quite disruptive in the airport.
He's sweating, he's pacing back and forth, he's throwing furniture around, he builds himself a little barricade at the front door of the IRL out of a couple of tall chairs.
What do you got? What do you got?
The RCMP showed up and he greeted them. He said, "Policia, policia," as if he was welcoming them because finally he was going to get some help.
Right to the end, Constable Jerry Rundell refused to concede that the Mounties did anything wrong with Robert Czekański.
I see that the video fully supports
my version of the events.
Before they get near Jacansky, one officer asks another, "May I taser him?" And the answer is yes.
Does the video show an attempt to hit you?
It shows a step forward. It shows, but an attempt to hit us, the whole interaction, the whole movement forward.
What was your rationale for firing the taser the first time?
He had the stapler open, his other fist raised. He's was in a combative stance, as we call it.
Officer, would you mind opening the stapler and show us the position it was in?
He had it like this.
Would you mind standing?
Absolutely. Had it like this. Okay. Hands up.
And given all of the four officers and the tools and the distance, that's what scared you?
That's what made me fear for the officer's safety, yes.
Can you give us the rationale for firing the taser the second time?
He was still fighting and struggling with us. I don't know why. He was not under control. He was fighting us, so that's why we had to use it.
Well, sir, he's not fighting with anybody at the moment that we're looking at right now at the end of the first taser, is he?
No.
You call ambulance. This gentleman's been tasered. Copy.
I can't say that I could have done anything differently. And that's unfortunate, but that is how it is.
Taser International has put forward a different model of policing now. Now they're telling police people that the best way to police is at the end of a 35-foot wire.
They panicked. They didn't know what to do. They abandoned their good basic training and they embraced some very questionable training that they had had more recently, and we ended up with a terrible tragedy.
There's frequent reports in the media that somebody has died or had another catastrophic consequence, and I'll just use the term, in association with the use of one of your company's products. When the company learns that such an incident occurred, does that come to your attention?
Not rarely, because that's usually handled by our media and our public relations team and our legal team. I deal in sales and operations.
Well, doesn't sales and operations encompass, at least to some degree, the safety of your product?
No, that's handled by, again, legal and medical, which my brother handles.
When did you first begin to receive notices of taser-associated deaths? And what I mean by that is deaths within a reasonable proximity of a taser application.
Objective form.
The first one was probably, I believe it was in Philadelphia.
What year?
In 2000.
For Taser's Rick Smith, sales and profits are skyrocketing, but so is another statistic, Taser-related deaths. The company says the Taser is not to blame because most of the victims were already fighting with police, or were delirious, or were high on drugs.
Of the cases that we've seen, we strongly believe, and our medical experts strongly believe, the Taser had no causal effect in those fatalities.
The application of the Taser, I believe, was the trigger factor or the stressful event which stressed an already damaged heart to the point where it went into cardiac arrest.
The Taser is what triggered his heart attack.
Definitely.
So when Dr. Kaur says the Taser triggered this man's heart attack, you think that can't happen?
I rely on the advice of medical experts who have told me There is absolutely no basis to conclude the taser contributed to this death.
Dr. Jeff Ho has conducted several research projects on tasers at the University of Minnesota.
None of the research that we have done to date, and ours is all human research to date, has found a connection between the application of a taser device and someone dying suddenly or unexpectedly.
We're talking about the effects of electricity. Those are largely instantaneous. And now with over 1 million human exposures, I don't think that there's any real room for scientific debate.
Happening right now, a taser death investigation in Robeson County.
Debate in Fort Worth lingers over the use of tasers. 5 people died after being tased by police.
15-year-old Brett Elder died early Sunday after being tasered by police officers.
None of these cases has the person died while being hit with the taser.
You're saying that this was a coincidence? They would have died anyway?
In every single case, these people would have died anyway.
The company insists that the taser is safe, and the police, in their training, are told they can rely on that claim.
The fact is, no one has died as a result of having a conductive energy weapon deployed on them.
Imagine the scrutiny a small company like us had, that if we didn't have the science and facts on our side, we wouldn't be here having this conversation, would we? We have it. That's why I'm still here talking to you. Come on, Phil. Sorry. We're fine.
The information is really difficult to obtain. Statistical data relative to taser deployments it seems to be closely guarded. And the only place that we were able to even begin searching for data was from Taser. And they were still of the opinion, and still are of the opinion, that their product doesn't kill anyone. Where do you begin to look for those statistics when there's no criteria to even begin categorizing them? You know, at what point, is Taser looked at as a contributing factor? If you taser someone in a tree and they fall out and die because they broke their neck, is that Taser a contributing factor? What's the baseline? Well, how do you, compile your stats?
Even some of the more vociferous critics have now come to understand that tasers are an important part of the police toolbox. Well, today, with over 300 medical studies, tasers are by far the most studied force option in existence. Far more than pepper spray, far more than batons or impact weapons. And we continue to see those studies come back and show that the safety record is pretty incredible. First, I'm going to have a little fun, and I'm going to show you this is a highly doctored photo. I'm going to test your mental acumen this morning. I'm going to see if you can spot the danger in this photo. If you say it is the shark in the water, you are dead wrong, because in fact, the danger in this photo are the coconuts in the palm trees. Because as funny as this may sound, falling coconuts kill 15 times as many people each year as shark attacks. If there's something that captures your imagination, it's the shark in the water. Well, in fact, the biggest risk is drowning. There are thousands and thousands of drownings every year. But as human beings, we tend to focus on things that perhaps capture our imagination more than the facts. And that's something we see happen with tasers out in the public media.
Yeah, Rick, but Jaws wouldn't have been the same if it had been a coconut falling on him.
Get rid of all this now. And I just couldn't believe some of the shit they were saying. They're a very strange company. There's something really off about them.
Well, at that point, the propaganda, if you will, that Taser was putting out in the public domain with respect to the safety margin of the device and the lack of risk already had become convincing to the police departments all across the country and, in fact, across the world that were purchasing the product in large numbers. They were already buying into the fact that this product was completely safe and essentially risk-free. And then to try to dissuade these police agencies, to try to convince them otherwise, is obviously a very daunting task, and that's where the litigation would begin to come in. We didn't have a theory when we first started. We had no conception whatsoever of what might have been the reason why we believe the taser caused this death. So we were dogged in our determination to try to come up with an answer to explain the death. When we started to conceive of a theory as to cause of death, we stumbled on metabolic acidosis. When did you first consider the possibility that the M26 could contribute to metabolic acidosis?
Object to form.
Well, again, if we consider that metabolic acidosis is a fancy word for the effects of exercise, I would say it's always been known that the taser causes muscle contractions similar to moderate exercise.
The taser device causes involuntary muscle contractions throughout the skeletal system, and this dumps lactic acid into the bloodstream.
And when the pH drops to a certain, dramatically low level, then you get into a situation where cardiac arrest, arrhythmias of the heart can occur. It logically flowed for us that if the device causes the contractions therefore create lactic acid.
Was there some science that contractions of muscles could cause some acidosis? Yes. But to make the conclusion, to jump to the conclusion that the application of a taser device could cause severe acidosis that could cause cardiac arrest would be like saying that walking up a flight of stairs could cause acidosis leading to cardiac arrest, because that's the level of exertion we're talking about with a taser device, as you well know from subsequent studies.
Now, with a 5-second discharge, the effect is negligible. It's measurable, but it's negligible. The impact is no more than a good workout in the gym.
But what if we repeat that? And what if we show a case where there's 5 discharges, or 10, or 15, or even more than 20, like Heston? We knew that the ultimate results of acidosis in that person's blood would be significantly greater. That, again, played into our theory of metabolic acidosis.
The jury accepted our theory, and the judge accepted our theory, and we prevailed.
Historically, as we've talked about this, our record has been 127 case dismissals, and we've suffered 1 courtroom loss. Well, we've had an important development in that case. We told you we would appeal it, and we did. So the headline grabber was that Taser was hit with a $6.2 million judgment, primarily in punitive damages. Well, very quickly, the punitive damages were thrown out, and the case was reduced to $1.7 million. We then took the case on appeal, and we just last week found out we prevailed on 3 out of 4 issues on appeal, and the $1.7 million has now been reduced to $150,000. So this is a huge success for our legal team, and frankly, I think for law enforcement in general. We believe that it paid off, that we continued to defend ourselves and our technology. And so, of course, this probably won't make headlines in the media, but that $6.2 million case was dramatically reduced to $150,000.
This is what the tobacco industry relied on for decades, was you can't prove that tobacco smoking causes cancer. You don't know what the exact mechanism is. It just happens that a lot of people who smoke get cancer. Well, a taser is relying on the same thing.
The Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security, meeting number 13. And we're going to be discussing today tasers, and we'd like to welcome to our committee from Taser International, Mr. Tom Smith, the chairman. We'll begin with the official opposition. Mr. Desange, please.
Are you suggesting to us at all, and if you are, I want you to admit that, are you suggesting to us that while 300 people have died in North America, 17 of them in Canada, subsequent to them being tasered, that tasers have not played any part whatsoever in their deaths?
Again, I would suggest that you have to look at the scientific research that has been done today. I've been tasered myself, and we rely on the scientific experts to look at the data. And in terms of the studies that have been done, we have not seen anything conclusively that has come back scientifically that has said a taser has killed. There are less than 30 cases where the taser has been listed as a contributing factor, meaning it's listed along with other devices, but that is completely different than saying the taser caused a certain outcome.
Are you then suggesting to me that the 270 that have died, other than the 30 that you say may have been contributed to by tasers, that those 270 would have died regardless of whether or not a taser was used?
Well, sir, I'm responding to the medical
No,
community.
I'm asking you a question. Give me a question in layperson's answer in a layperson's language. Are you suggesting then that those 270 would have simply vanished even if taser had not been used?
I'm telling you the research that was done on those particular cases has shown that the taser did not cause nor contribute in those 270 cases.
And they would have died regardless?
Well, I'm not going to make that statement, but I'm going to tell you the research that has been done claimed the taser had nothing to do with the outcome of those tragic incidents. I'm trying to get this for the court reporter first.
Everything's on the table.
What do you mean by that?
It means it could be banned or it could be very severely limited as to when they can be used.
It's hard to be able to really judge how safe the taser is, what the effects are, who's died, who's been hurt, what's happened during the course of training, because we don't have that information. They've been withholding it.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come up here and speak to you today. Airbags were designed to make automobile accidents safer, much like a taser was designed to make interaction and confrontation between people safer. As you take this analysis, if not a taser device to end a confrontation between people, what force option is that officer going to be left to use to end that confrontation and end it effectively and take that person into custody?
Heads up, don't.
Morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for being patient and letting me speak.
Do you accept that Robert Jatansky died in part because he was tasered?
Sir, we're all waiting. I'm waiting. You're waiting. Everybody's waiting. We have not seen the medical examiner's report.
What else could it possibly be, sir?
Sir, I'm not going to speculate. I've said repeatedly, we're all waiting to see what the medical examiner has to say.
Mr. Smith, are you saying that is it possible that Mr. Jatansky would have fallen down and died without being hit by a taser?
Again, I'm not going to speculate on what could have or would have. I mean, we could play that game all day long.
What do you think of all this stuff that he's pointing as evidence that taser use is safe?
I'm unconvinced. Call me a cynic. The fact is that all of the evidence that he has led isn't conclusive to suggest that even under appropriate circumstances, if taser is used, it is not going to cause death.
I have been tasered multiple times.
In the chest?
Yes, I have.
Consecutively?
I have only, when I've done my exposures, it's been a single 5-second application.
That's my question, and that's when the risk increases according to the science.
No, we haven't, sir, I will disagree with you. You show me the science where it shows the risk increases with multiple exposures. We have not seen it.
We need to do more research. That's not what's happening right now.
So should
these guys have blinkers on and they're saying there is sufficient evidence, sufficient data, full speed ahead. Absolutely not.
But knowing it's being misused, though.
Of course we're concerned. That's why we do all the medical studies.
But I'm asking, are you personally concerned about it?
Well,
you personally, not we, but you know, when you use we, you're talking about the company. I'm asking about you as a human being. Is this something that you personally concern yourself with?
I make sure that we have people that are doing the job of looking at the medical research, yes, but I don't do it. We all can't do every job in the company, so we have people that are focused on the medical aspects, the safety aspects, and again, I get the summary details, the summary of the details of what the research is finding. But I'm not involved in the research, I don't attend the research. That's handled within our legal and medical research area of the company.
But in any event...
may I comment on that?
Well, that's not a question. That was more a statement on my part. Let me just move on real quickly to a couple of last things.
Can we take one last bathroom break? It can be very fast, like 2 minutes.
Actually, I'd prefer not. If you can hold on for 20 minutes.
Then I can't. 20 minutes. I cannot assure that I can answer cognitively and accurately. We've been going for well over an hour.
Oh, no. We've been going for a lot less than an hour this time.
I've been watching the clock. We took our last break at 3:30. It's now 4:45.
Well,
so if that was a 10-minute break.
I'm going to insist that we continue. I've given you plenty of breaks today, and I think it's been more than reasonable. I just got a few more minutes of questions, and I have a flight to catch, as you know, and I want to finish.
You can't give me 120 seconds to go to the restroom. Would you rather spend that time debating about this?
It's your choice, but in any event, let me ask you this. In terms of the risk assessment that was done in the Sticky Shocker review, did Tayser ever produce a document that referenced a comparable risk assessment for the M26?
Objection form.
I don't know what you're talking about, but if you have a document, I'd be happy to look at it. We have a compendium of studies and documents related to the M and X26 runs into probably over 3,000 pages right now.
I think Butler, if I recall correctly, was the first of the series of cases.
John and Peter at that point were all involved with what happened to Mr. Heston, which was metabolic acidosis, excited delirium, whatever you want to call it. They were focused on the science and the medicine around that, and they weren't interested in what happened to Mr. Butler.
Butler presented an interesting challenge for us. We knew that our acidosis theory was based on multiple discharges. We just in our own minds had thought that it would have to be at least 5 discharges. But suddenly we have Butler and there's only 3 discharges and we have a cardiac arrest.
And there was no other explanation. He wasn't on cocaine. He wasn't on methamphetamines. He was a drunk guy on the bus.
We're faced with this daunting prospect that our acidosis theory doesn't look like it's going to apply in this case. What then could be the explanation?
I became convinced in reading Tayser's research and the way Tayser was representing things that it couldn't happen. I said, the current is too low, it can't capture the heart, blah, blah, blah.
Law enforcement at that point in time was being trained by the Tayser company when they sold them the Tayser devices that they could use the Tayser device just like they used their firearm. Shoot for center mass, shoot for the chest, and it would not affect the human heart. Could not affect the human heart.
And when I looked at the Darrell Turner case, I was absolutely appalled. Turner case was an extremely important case. No other restraint other than the Tayser was involved, and it was a direct chest shot. He came out of the back room, he's wearing an undershirt. Darrell knocks a stand off of the counter. Just as this is happening, Officer Dawson pulls up, and he can kind of hear the row from outside. And he comes in, and you see clearly on the tape, he's pulling the Tayser as he's just walking in the front door before he knows anything that's going on. And Darrell's kind of standing in a corner, and you'll see it very clearly. And Dawson just walks up to him, and Darrell's just standing there, and you see the laser sight right on the sternum. And then Dawson pulls the trigger from 4 or 5 feet, and then Darrell does the walk and staggers away, and you can follow it on the different cameras. And then he collapses off camera. There's 2 cameras on each of the front doors, and he's right underneath them. And then you can see what the timing is before the fire department and then the paramedics show up. And then they take him out on the gurney and he's dead. So what you're saying, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. What you're saying is that the use of the Tayser had nothing to do with the cardiac arrest in this case. That Daryl was about to collapse into cardiac arrest anyway when Officer Dawson walked into the Food Lion, and then he did, and it just had no causal connection to the TASER application. Is that your testimony?
What I'm saying is that, to the best of our knowledge, this does not appear that the direct electric effects of the TASER would be the most likely cause of the cardiac arrest, and that this case is more similar to the cases of sudden cardiac death in high school athletes, i.e. related to the physical stress of the situation and other factors. I'm sure it's not a fully understood phenomenon why young, otherwise very healthy-looking people collapse and die during physically stressful events.
Were you aware of the case of Daryl Turner?
I don't recall the name.
The agencies are relying on medical safety information they are getting from your company, don't you agree?
Object to foundation.
They're relying upon the full gamut of training, research, their trainers' inputs, use of force policy, civil rights, and then their own community standards. And then we want the instructor to go back to their agency and formulate their own policies.
Right, but don't you believe that they are taking into account the representations that your company is making about medical safety?
Object to foundation.
I can't speak for those agencies. That's a hypothetical. I'm just guessing on this then.
So you really don't know the answer to that?
I couldn't speak for the individual agencies.
I don't know if there was any one thing that convinced us, but roughly around that time, we got in touch with Dr. Douglas Zipes. And that was a seminal moment in this litigation.
It was pretty clear to me that this was TASER-induced cardiac arrest. We know that an electrical pulse either delivered through the skin, the chest wall, like from the TASER, or directly to the heart, as a pacemaker might do, can capture the normal heartbeat and rev that rate up to extremely rapid rates, 400 to 600 times a minute. And it looks like a bag of squiggly worms with no effective squeeze, so blood is not going to the brain and to the other tissues, and you die very quickly, 4 to 6 minutes or so.
The earliest thing we found out was that through Dr. Zipes, that Dr. Patrick Chu, a well-known electrophysiologist at the Cleveland Clinic, along with another doctor, Dr. Laccaretti, had been commissioned to do research by TASER International with respect to the cardiac consequences of their device. This is back in 2005, early part of 2006.
You picked pigs for your experiment because they have a heart-to-body ratio weight and cardiac anatomy that is similar to humans, correct?
Yes, and it's also easier to do experiments with.
They were getting effects from the TASER discharges on a swine model, which indicated that cardiac capture could occur. Cardiac capture being the precursor to ventricular fibrillation and ultimately cardiac arrest.
When we've gathered all our data from the experiments, we presented that data to TASER.
When the science started coming out, it showed that there were very substantial risks to this device. What was their response?
I don't recall exactly what their response was. I seem to remember that they were appreciative of the results and thanked us for the project.
If you take Dr. Chu's statement at face value, they knew as early as 2005, sometime in 2005, while the research was being conducted. But certainly when the paper was published in 2006, they knew that this risk existed. And at that point, they did nothing.
Here you're being told by doctors that you paid for that this is a risk, and I'm saying, wasn't this spoken about in the company, and wasn't some effort made to get a warning out in the summer of 2006 so that this police officers who are using your device would know that this was a danger?
I would have to go back and look at what was done. I was not involved with testing, research, and development when these results are being evaluated by our team.
Is this the first time, as you sit here today, that anyone has pointed out to you that Dr. Laccaretti raised this concern in 2006?
Yeah, I didn't even read this before. I don't remember reading this.
The assessment of our scientific advisors was then and continues to be that that risk is exceedingly low in humans. Frankly, during those points in time, the findings were actually continuing to show significant safety margins, even in the presence of drugs like cocaine.
Well, I disagree with your statement. We've never said there's no risk. Walking out the door of this building has risk. There's risk associated with things all the time. And I believe we do warn for risks.
Well, I'm not talking about risk of falling off a building or getting hit in the eye with a dart. I'm talking about the risk of having a cardiac arrest from ventricular fibrillation. Has your company ever said that that cannot happen?
I've never heard our company say it cannot never 100% ever happen.
You see exhibit number 8?
I see exhibit number 8.
And is that a PowerPoint that was put out by your company?
Very early, yes.
And it says no effect on cardiac pumping?
That's the second bullet point, yes.
Okay.
And at that point in time, there was no evidence based on that information.
Well, you just testified under oath that you never said, your company never said that there was, it was risk-free when it came to cardiac arrest.
You never say never. At this point in time, what tasers do not do, we have not seen any effect on cardiac pumping whenever this slide was put together.
Well, that's not what you're saying here.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Don't change my words.
I think that this effect is getting tremendous level of attention relative to the extremely rare probability risk of it happening.
Say that again?
Yeah, I mean, let me rephrase what I'm getting at here. I mean, do you believe that when it comes to product safety and warning the public about the safety of products that you're putting into their hands for use with themselves or on other people, like your devices, that when it comes to warning them about potential risks, it's better to be safe than sorry?
I still don't understand the question.
Ask Dr. Bozeman, independent of TASER, U.S. Department of Justice funded, 1,201 actual applications in the field. 99.75%. 99.75% of those cases resulted in no significant injury. 1,200 cases, no significant injury of 99.75%. That is the real proof in the pudding. That's where the critics are afraid to go.
Bozeman's study doesn't prove anything. I mean, first, there were 2 deaths, and they eliminated those. Said, oh, those weren't due to the taser. I mean, most people who get tasered don't sustain significant injuries. I mean, that's absolutely true. It just hurts like a motherfucker, you know? But it doesn't eliminate the possibility that it could still happen. We took 1,200 drunk drivers, you know, people with alcohol between 1.2 and 1.5. And you know what? They drove home from the bar, and there wasn't one traffic fatality. So that proves that drunk driving does not increase the risk of death due to traffic accident. I mean, that's you know, it's just bullshit.
254 mobile. 254, go ahead. Attempt stop vehicle, South Williams, near Carpenter, standby.
You think about all the good things that you went through in life, and somehow this damn incident just keeps coming back in your head. So all the good things that you're thinking about just kind of floats away, and everything from that evening comes back.
Stanley gets out of his vehicle. He parks right here, which, as you can see right over here behind this tree, is where Stanley lives.
I heard sirens and I opened my eyes. I just lay down and I opened my eyes and there was lights shining in my bedroom.
Stanley's here. He's going in and out of his pockets. He's non-confrontational. The officers allow him to go in and out of his pockets until the officer walks up and starts talking to him. Stanley reaches in his pocket a few times, I think no less than 6 or 7 times. And he's trying to make a call to his mother, who's in the house, to let her know that there's a traffic stop or something's going on out here.
I did not grab my cell phone, and I was out the door before he called. When I walked across the street, his face lit up and said, "Mom." He was already standing outside. He was calling me. And he saw me in the middle of the street, and he said, "Mom." And I asked the officer, I said, "What is going on?" He said, "At this time, ma'am, we do not know."
About this time, a second car pulls up, which is Sergeant Newbrow, the supervisor, pulls in front. Another car pulls up behind, which is Officer Baird and Officer Dotson. So now you have 4 police officers, 2 canine dogs on the scene of a speeding violation. Stanley hands him a driver's license. Brayfogle steps to the rear of the car to run the license information, while Officer Dotson and Officer Baird are standing up here next to Stanley. For unknown reasons, Officer Baird places his hands on Stanley. Stanley looks, in the video, he looks kind of confused as to why he's being touched. Apparently, at one point in time, 2 or 3 officers had their hands on Stanley and were going to handcuff him. And for whatever reason, they all decided to let go of Stanley.
So he already had him in that hold. He lets go of him, and Stanley took a couple steps back.
Stanley gets over into this area. He kind of moves out of range from the police car's camera. The dash cam doesn't catch the action that's going on off to the side of the street.
There's no dispute on any of the witnesses or anything. Stanley took a couple steps back. He had his arms up in the air, and he said, "I'm going to tase you."
We can hear on the dash cam, on the audio recording, you can hear the words, conversation going back and forth, and then you hear multiple different outbursts of screams.
233.
239 here for 2 again.
10-4, mobility. I just wanted to save him. I just wanted to help him. They wouldn't let me, so I ran in and got my husband. I was like, "Kenny, you need to get up now." I never dreamt when I walked out that door that that's what I would be facing, or I would have woke him up and took him with me.
And when I went out there and I went around Stanley and I tried to get over there, they would not let us no further than from the curb to him, and threatened to taser, threatened to throw us in jail, threatened to arrest my wife.
233.
Stanley Harlan breaks my heart. These other cases do as well, but here you see it all played out on video.
39, show you en route. Area of Williams and Carpenter, 38 minutes after.
Within a minute or a minute and a half, you see his head go totally back with agonal respirations, and this poor young man is dying. He's got ventricular fibrillation.
Send ARCAD, please. White male. Claiming to be semi-conscious, somewhat non-responsive.
As we all stood there and watched Stanley die, these officers stood around there and did nothing.
The police officers are just standing around as I know he's got ventricular fibrillation and is dying. And they don't know that. They've not been taught that, and they don't think of that. And this is a life that could have been saved, obviously.
214 Marley, we need an ambulance to expedite if they're not.
214, they have been advised. I'm on the line with them now. They said they are en route. Just information.
2 more.
And they had this weapon that they don't know that much about, and they used it on him, and this is results of it.
And what is the gist of your disagreement with Mr. Braidwood's findings?
I think a lot of them were based politically, not relevant to the facts.
Well, what is the politics of this? I mean, politically, to me, means sort of trying to satisfy a constituency.
Correct.
What's the constituency that?
The public of Canada.
Check 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check. Good there?
I would like to spend a few minutes summarizing my most significant findings and recommendations. This report makes 19 recommendations respecting the appropriate use of conducted energy weapons, including appropriate training. It has been left up to each police department to develop its own training programs. The result has been a patchwork quilt of inconsistent policies among the police department and an inappropriate reliance on the manufacturer's training materials.
What happened in that case with Braidwood and the Zansky case was horrendous speculation that the taser was the cause of deaths. A lot of things, literally, you mentioned things that go wrong in an agency. Some of those things are not done on purpose. Some of those things that, that's use of force. Things that can go wrong. What was this guy doing in the airport for 9 hours? Flying, office cigarettes, no alcohol, all these things come into play. The videotape shows officers come up to him, and they don't understand why they were there. They don't understand the stuff that he was doing before. There's a very irrational behavior, and grabbing a stapler, not a little tiny one, big one.
The Braidwood inquiry released a stinging report last month, and it stated that, based on medical evidence, tasers can kill.
Conducted energy weapons do have the capacity to cause serious injury or death.
And then with Braidwood looking at all the different things, they brought in experts. They brought in people that had no business being there in my book. And then to ignore some of the human studies that we provided them, that was wrong. We disagree with that. So we did the due process and we filed a complaint with that.
The process by which the conclusions and our recommendations were determined was not fair. And it wasn't fair to Tayser, and they were not fair to the public at large.
It's rare for public inquiries to face such legal challenges in Canada, but critics are not surprised considering how much is at stake for Tayser International. This goes beyond BC. According to the company's lawyer, the Commission's finding may affect its financial interest and reputation. Frédéric Zalac, CBC News, Vancouver.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
and welcome to the TASER International Incorporated Customer Update.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate everybody giving us your time this afternoon to talk about this important topic. I want to start by addressing a couple of the questions we've been receiving over email. The first one is, are chest hits with the TASER dangerous? And the answer to that is definitively no. So many people have said, okay, if the probability is so low, why does TASER have to warn about this? Biggest reason here in my mind is risk management and avoiding the controversy. Another question we got was, will TASER help defend cases? There's some anxiety out there from officers that have written directly to me saying, does this mean TASER's walking away? Will TASER help defend officers where there's chest shots involved? And the answer is unequivocally yes. We pride ourselves that we stand up both for our technology and for officers here. So hopefully this can help to put some of the debate behind us, and we can move forward with life with people focusing on the fact that every study I'm aware of that's looked at it has found that the TASER is, if not the safest force option, the only other one that's even close is pepper spray.
So there is an acknowledgement that there's a minute possibility that a shot to the chest could result in cardiac arrest.
I think the better way that I would answer that, not better, but from the company's perspective, is we cannot prove it's zero.
Thanks to all of you at TASER for what you've done for law enforcement.
Thank you. Hey, and I would say sorry for this situation. I don't enjoy it either. Unfortunately, we live in a country where you spill hot coffee in your lap and you can sue for $10 million. It's a bit ludicrous that our tort situation puts us all into these circumstances, but it's the world we live in. So appreciate your understanding and support, and stay safe out there.
Okay, that's great information. We're a department of at least 13,000 officers. We just want to make sure that we clarify these things. Yep.
When they changed the target area and said, hey, you shouldn't shoot people in the chest with these things, I don't, that's kind of made me look at it kind of crooked and say, wait a minute here, why are they saying this? If for all these years they've said, this is a completely safe tool and you don't have anything to worry about. We've got all this background and documentation to support our claim. It's kind of a catch-22, Do you use it on the hopes that it works fine and nothing happens, or do you not use it and hope everything works fine and nothing happens? So.
We did get into a case, and we were under the belief from the beginning that TASER International would indemnify the city if there was a lawsuit or they would send experts in or there was some monetary judgment made. And we found that we got into a case where we were sued and TASER did not indemnify the city. So, obviously that was disturbing to us, and we could see that the playing field was changing, and it was changing on the other end. It was changing on TASER International's end.
Nobody told us that these tasers were going to kill people, You come out with a sales pitch, you say this, and then when it doesn't work out, you just disappear. That's not right either. Because I'll tell you what, if I discharge pepper spray and it makes a guy go blind, I expect Guardian to come in and explain, because as far as I'm told, it doesn't make any go blind. I've never seen it, but if that were to happen, damn it, they better come in. That's not my fault. If I knew that about pepper spray, I wouldn't use it, You swore this wasn't going to happen. You swore that this was a statistically normal thing, that these people were not dying at any more of a unusual rate than they would have absent the TASER,
Everybody wants the best, and we thought we were doing the right thing at the time.
This is the beginning of tape number 2 of the video deposition of Patrick Smith.
Now, let's go back to 1993 and your dining room table. Were you doing anything to follow what was happening in research and development?
General updates, but nothing specific. Again, we all can't do everything, and that was my brother's responsibility. I trusted him in that role.
So what did he tell you?
Back in the days of the 5-watt system, when those they were testing it on were fighting through the 5-watt system, Tayser International was in a tough spot. What are they going to do here?
The company was really stretched very thin. It was still a privately held corporation. It had used all its resources to try to get this product to the market.
By 1999, they didn't have a viable product to market. They were not getting outside venture capital funding. If the business goes belly up, they lose their parents' money. They had $50,000 in the bank and $2.7 million in debt. They were going to go bankrupt.
So you had those discussions with your brother. What was your understanding of what he was going to do?
Change the output to have an effect on people who were motivated.
And did he tell you how he intended to change the output?
No.
Okay, basically you cranked up the power of the air taser 34,000 4 times.
We increased the energy and the power by roughly 4 times and the output charge by roughly 3 times.
Well, were you personally concerned that if the effectiveness of the device was changed, it might also become a more dangerous device?
Was I concerned that making it effective would be making it more dangerous?
Right.
It wasn't. It was something I knew that they were going to be addressing in research and development.
Were you concerned that you might be distributing a product that was not safe?
Objection to form. I didn't know it was unsafe at the time, so I'm not sure that I buy into that argument.
Okay.
So they did some very minimal studies. They weren't a public company, and on humans, they really were just looking for volunteers and giving them very short shocks that did not replicate the experience of the taser in the field.
It's exactly the same mechanism of product development that I learned when working, developing a project management system for a pharmaceutical company.
The statement is ludicrous, to say the least. If you look at the testing that they did, which encompasses approximately 950 people, the vast majority of those exposures were for a second or less. But they never analyzed any physiological changes in blood chemistry when they did that.
They used it on each other. Now, they're healthy guys who are not high, and they decided this is safe. And they went out to the police under that circumstance, and they believed it was safe.
Here in Canada, we had a massive failure of the regulatory arm. A guy, Lauer, wrote a report saying, I had a look at this, and this thing's been exhaustively tested, and it's no problem. We can introduce it here in British Columbia. And then it was introduced.
I don't recall the names of people who advised me, but I do remember receiving advice that it had been vigorously tested. I was given some literature that said that it's been vigorously tested, and I approved it.
Advanced taser hit buttock to calf.
Okay. Whoa!
With Tayser, there's no FDA. Nobody regulated their product. Nobody told them, the Consumer Product Safety Administration regulates their product, just like they regulate toasters.
With the new Tayser X2, more lives will be saved. Officers will be safer on the streets. Injury rates once again will be reduced.
It has never been looked at by any electrical standards body in the world. And, in a way, you can't blame Tayser International. They're a company. They're in the business to sell a product. They're going to sell it the best way they can.
Getting hit with a taser is not pleasant, but an analogy I use sometimes is chemotherapy, right? Like if you've got cancer, they do awful things to your body to try and save you. Well, our society has a cancer. We're a violent, dangerous society.
We believe in what we are doing. We have changed the world.
Very few people can say that.
Look, I've been hit with this thing 7 times. Every senior employee at this company has been hit with a taser. Many of our wives, many of our children have been hit with tasers. So we believe this is the safest way to get a violent person under control. That's huge. We're very proud of what we do. And it is like a religion to us. As we sit here today, the result of this work is we've developed a technology that, if you include the M26 and the X26, is deployed by 500,000 police officers in over 16,000 agencies. We've had over 1 million volunteers and over 1 million field uses. We've prevented conservatively 40 to 50,000 lethal force incidents from occurring. And it's had an extraordinary safety record. So I'm very proud. I think you would be hard-pressed to find any other scientific development in the field of modern policing that went through a similarly rigorous approach.
If it's that evil and dangerous, it wouldn't have lasted 5 years. And yet here we are 18 years later after revolutionizing law enforcement. It's probably the biggest change in law enforcement since the radio. It really has changed law enforcement. And a good revolution isn't just some new innovative product. A good revolution comes with pain.
And its success gave you a platform and allowed your company to go public, right?
That is correct.
And made you a multimillionaire in the process, right?
I'm not going to answer that.
Well, it was financially successful for you, right?
The company's been financially successful, yes. And if you want to look at my records, you can go see what's public, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you today. I think that's irrelevant to your question, but...
Okay.
Because I would say you're probably a successful attorney sitting there as well.
Thank you. Why don't we go off the record? We're approaching sort of the noon hour.
On behalf of the RCMP, I want to apologize for our role in the tragic death of your son, Robert Szukanski.
A resolute Sophia Szyszowska accepted the formal apology from the top Mountie in BC.
We will have to make sure that what happened to my son Robert cannot be repeated.
In 2006, Tayser International's own scientists told them that the Tayser waveform can capture the heart. They continued to sell the product. They did not warn their customers.
I don't dispute any of the comments you've made about potential problems with CEW. It's something that we're very alive to. We want to see more research, and we'll welcome it. We'll be involved in it.
But shouldn't that research have been done before the weapons were even accepted by the force? Because you relied on the manufacturer's word.
You go to the website and it says that they've saved 92,990 lives. Apparently it happens every, I don't know, the next one's gonna be in 4 minutes. I just think that we would have noticed that. You know, I think we would have noticed 92,000 fewer fatal injuries involving police or their subjects.
I don't know if other departments have experienced, maybe some of them haven't experienced a taser death. But you know what? I was a cop before tasers, and I did it just fine.
Since we've made a decision to take the tasers off the street, we haven't seen a rise in officer injury, or we haven't even seen any difference. I mean, it was well publicized that we took them off the street, and I haven't seen any difference from the bad guys either. So everything's pretty status quo. I don't want to say that I'm not going to offer the best line of defense for my officers, but the officers, they have Tiger lights, they have OC spray, they have guns, they wear bulletproof vests, they have rifles in the back of their car, we have tanks. So for me, getting rid of the tasers, to me, it was a no-brainer.
Daryl Turner, I mean, you look at that kid getting shot in the chest, and then the company sitting there saying that didn't kill him. I mean, what the fuck, you know? Shouldn't we have some control on these weapons? There's no control. There's no government agency. You know, the training comes from the manufacturer who has an interest in encouraging use. Shoot a bunch of fucking electricity in somebody's chest and they drop dead. We're giving cops these things and they're running around shooting people for not signing parking tickets fast enough or something.
Most people celebrate a holiday, such as Labor Day. We buried Stanley on Labor Day 5 years ago. So Labor Day weekend is not really a good weekend for us.
It's nice to have Stanley's friends all come out, just, if nothing else, eat a good meal, talk a little bit about Stan.
Well, first and foremost, someone losing a life is tragic. I lost my father. That's a painful experience. I felt that for years and still feel it, and that was in 2005. So I can't pretend to be in the parents' or the family's shoes when there's been an in-custody death. That's horrible. So I wouldn't pretend to say I know what they're going through, but I know the grieving process. It's brutal. But I would also try and take the perspective of the lives that we've saved from someone having to not use a baton strike somebody and beat them into submission. We do sleep well at night because we know we're on the right path. Really, the future's looking bright for Tayser. So the controversies, as painful as they are, they make you grow. They make you respond in terms of innovation. So Tayser's saving lives. That's the business that we're in. We're protecting the truth and we're protecting lives.
Anything else you want to add?
Good interview.